The evolution of the Expedition continues with Arc Raiders, and it might be happening sooner than we expected. Today we're taking a look at a relatively big change that's been teased by the team over at Embark for the future of Arc Raiders and what it could mean for players along with when we can expect it. So drop your thoughts as we go along. What would you like to see adjusted about the Expedition if it were up to you? If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to stay up to date with all things Arc Raiders and even more FPS content. I'd love to have in the community. Finally, check out my friends over at Advanced GG. We've recently launched some cool co-branded stuff, including a flavor that I'd highly recommend. Code Espresso can get 10% off your entire order. But anyways, let's get into it. Let's talk firstly about the brief history of the Expeditions that we've seen since the game launched. Each of our three so far have been a little bit different than the last. Expedition 1, you needed 5 million coins and stash value combined for 5 skill points. Expedition 2, they took some learnings that 5 million wasn't necessarily something that was the sweet spot that they had thought. They gave a little bit more time for heads up for players to end up getting, this time around, 3 million for 5 skill points. And then this past Expedition, most recently, was Expedition 3, where 100,000 damage was required to end up getting 5 skill points. Those skill points being divvied out a little bit more on a top-heavy scale, where realistically, you got over half of the reward by only doing half the challenge. What I mean by that is the first 4 of those 5 skill points were acquired by hitting 50,000 rather than the 100,000. So over half the reward for only half the damage required. But anyways, the 4th Expedition may indeed actually be the 4th of 4 to be changing. But what that will require and what our rewards are still very much so in question. Now, I say this because it was actually recently mentioned, the change of Expeditions explicitly, where in the most recent blog post from Arc Raiders talking about the future of the game, they said building for the long term. One thing that has been increasingly clear since launch is how important progression and player goals are to Arc Raiders' experience. If you love Arc Raiders, you want more reasons to keep returning to the Rust Belt, and we want to build systems that continue evolving alongside the game. Some of the progression improvements we want to implement simply need more development time that we haven't been able to address properly while running on a monthly cycle. Moving to the larger updates allows us to spend more time refining the systems players engage with the most. We're working to deepen progression across multiple areas of Arc Raiders while continuing to expand how players shape and personalize their Raider. We're also investing more into features like trials so they remain reliably fun to engage with, not a grind. We're also putting effort into making the Expedition project more rewarding and less punishing to pursue. This is an ongoing part of Arc Raiders' evolution, and you'll start seeing the first steps of that very soon. So, admittedly, kind of strange because they themselves said that these bigger updates are coming less frequently, though in the same announcement, they've addressed 2 foundational items and adjustments. One being a brand new trader coming this next week, one being a foundational adjustment to how Expeditions work. The first thing that stands out to me about that mention here of the Expedition changes is that we'll see the details of that very soon. Now, to me, very soon is something that in this context for an Expedition is definitely sooner rather than later. We see Expeditions on a relative timetable of about every 2 months, right? So that means that if it's not this next one, you're already looking out towards what will be the August timeframe. And if it's not even that, it's the October timeframe, which would be in line with the next major update. But why would you say very soon that we learn about that if it's something that is still 5 months away at that point? As strange as talking about a month away still sounds for the next Expedition window, that we see a countdown time or two to the mid to end of June, it's what fits the mentioned very soon verbiage to the best in my opinion. Everything else just seems way too far off. But that said, I guess the question then turns to what could be changing. To me, I think there's 2 potential options here at this. The first thing is that we take it at face value, making the Expedition project more rewarding and less punishing. So that could deal overall with what we have to contribute in terms of either the first 4 stages of the items we have to hunt down and submit, whether it be changing the amount of the provisions we have to end up granting on that final page for combat items, crafting and stuff like that, or potentially talking about the overall project experience itself, like including what is required in that Expedition window, whether it be a challenge going forward, whether it be something that is like the damage or something else entirely, but still challenge-based and not necessarily coin and stash value-based. That is one element that could be changing here at this, but another one could be the rewards. Because not only will we see with the Expedition 4 a new set of cosmetics, the patchwork outfit is completed for those that have done 3 Expeditions, which, sidebar, Expedition cosmetics are linear, so if you feel like you may have missed out on this patchwork skin because you only did 2 of 3 or something like that for the Expeditions, you'll still end up getting the cosmetics associated with each Expedition. It's just a matter of when you complete them. So if you just did your 2nd Expedition, but other people have 3, you just have to wait until the next Expedition window, do that again, and then you'll end up having that 3rd set of rewards for the cosmetics. It's based based off your own personal completion. So not only will you have a new set of cosmetics, more rewards in terms of XP boosts and things like that, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see if this is when we see the removal of skill points as a reward upon your 4th expedition, capping at 16 total here across the first 3 and then going out into the future with something different. Now, that could be wrong, and it sounds kind of crazy with the changes made to the expedition in the same sense of the vault coming with the new trader. Like, what else would you want to reward players with? And while the answer is truly, I don't know what would replace it here with this, it's also something that makes sense from the words of the devs themselves. As far back as January, it was mentioned by high-ranking members of Embark like Virgil Watkins, design director, that skill points weren't always going to be the thing that they wanted to incentivize players with. He was asked specifically in an interview, is there a danger of making skills too good, assuming some players may have, say, 20 extra skill points from expeditions? To which Watkins answered, precisely, that's the danger there, and that's why skill points come right up to the line of, do I have a clear advantage over other players? So we'd have to be quite deliberate. The current intent is skill points will not be the reward forever with expeditions. It will cap out at some point to whatever kind of makes sense. The intent is if you've done enough expeditions to have, say, the full amount of extra skill points available to you, you've got maybe a couple of slight quality of life changes, like I can have a little extra stamina and still do security breach and maybe move quieter, or whatever the constellation of those points you've allocated is. So frankly, it kind of seems like the entire shape of the expeditions landscape could be changing. What we know of so far may entirely turn upside down, because if we have that cap on expedition skill points, if we have a way to circumvent our reset on our most prized possessions via the trader coming that allows us to carry items over from expedition to expedition, I'm very curious to see what is going to come of all of this and what lies ahead for us, what these changes may entail. Now, I guess the question turns to when do we actually learn about this, rather than having talked about when do these changes take place. Let's assume that this may be our next expedition that introduces these changes. The window is currently slated for, off the top of my head, I want to say it's like Monday the 22nd or Tuesday the 23rd to open up, which could potentially be in line with the slight content update of some kind for June. Given that the trader and what we see assumedly as this month's update is next week, this means that we no longer exactly have the last Tuesday of the month to see our content update. But if it would be that time next month, in line with prior mentions, we'd see that about a week or 2 ahead of time when that expedition window would open up, that we get all the details, giving players ample time to get ready for the next departure. Now, that sounds really close because it kind of is. I mean, we're only 2 to 3 weeks out from when that would be right now, because with the extension of the last expedition window, it essentially cut out a week of what we had for this window, it appears, as the initial timer for the expedition was down about like 6 days lower than the prior expeditions on day 1, if I'm not mistaken. But again, that's assuming that they play it similar to prior announcements. They give the similar window of knowing what to expect for the way to get your rewards and going into the next expedition is. With a revamp of some kind and the overall pressure we've seen recently for more communication and sooner, especially with the expeditions, I wouldn't be surprised if we see something at the beginning of June to give more than enough time to get acquainted with the adjustments of what's coming, if it is indeed coming with this next expedition, which I kind of feel like it will be. So speculation aside, it is interesting that from now until October, we do have 2 somewhat major updates seemingly coming sooner rather than later. One being a trader that offers new air quote endgame potential, or ways to circumvent the expedition if you don't find it all that worthwhile as a player for things like stash slots. Then expedition changes coming likely before October, but interesting to see how all this works out. So let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think here of this? Do you think we'll see the expedition changing with the next one upcoming as of next month? What do you think we'll see changing with this? And if it is a reward change, what would you like to see in place of skill points? Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think of this here? If you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Arc Raiders and even more FPS content I'd love to have in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.